Welcome to another episode of Everybody's Trying. Today, we are talking all about saunas. You've seen it all over social media, naked guys packed into a 200-degree wooden box telling you it's the secret to living to 110. But is it though? Are we actually sweating out toxins, or are we just sweating? Can sitting in a hot room really replace a run? Can saunas reduce our risk of dementia? Or are we just slowly cooking our brains and calling it wellness? And are saunas going to make us lose our hair? These are all great questions, and today we're going to break it all down. This is Everybody's Trying Sauna.
Everybody's trying.
Everybody's trying, but this conversation is not medical advice. Ask your doctor if this podcast is right for you. Side effects may include more informed decision-making and a better life.
Everybody's trying.
Do not listen to Everybody's Trying if you are allergic to Everybody's Trying.
So I'm very excited about this episode today where we're going to break down saunas.
I'm excited to talk about sauna. It's something that I incorporate when I'm able to into my routine, and something that I look forward to having in a future house.
Yeah. And what I love about this conversation we're about to have is, we obviously are talking about trends in the industry, things that are worth trying, maybe not worth trying, why everybody's getting so hype around it. But this one excites me because it seems to be one of the more well-resourced or researched subjects that we've talked about. And I feel like it gives you really good ammunition, but I don't know that everybody is understanding some of these huge benefits behind saunas.
It's nice when you have these things that have a long-standing cultural practice that is taken up and used by lots of people. The idea, to be quite simple, of sauna is you're sitting in a hot room, right? But naturally, that's too simple. So we've overcomplicated it in many ways with all of these different things, with barrel saunas, dry saunas, wet saunas, infrared, all of these different things. And your purists from any individual camp will have their own argument. But the goal essentially is that we're putting the body in a stressed environment because of the heat, right? So the specific range of heats vary greatly, but a good goal would kind of be to be around 180, right? Like kind of that 185-ish degree room if you're doing a dry sauna, with the goal of raising your body temperature, right? So you're trying to get your body temperature up to about 102.2 to get the maximum benefit from sauna. And what that does is kind of act as an exercise mimetic, right? So we're trying to exercise without having to do the exercise, because I'm heating my body up and I'm getting a lot of the same responses that maybe you get from, we've talked about zone 2, going for a nice brisk walk, but instead I'm able to just, relax and sit and sweat it out.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit. This is interesting, though, because a lot of what we're going to talk about and what we're going to show you guys, it deals with studies that are coming out of Finnish culture. And my question to you is, when you were there, was it something that was really easily accessible and low cost?
Yes. So that's kind of the nice thing is, I was in Sweden too. I'll throw that one out there. But many of the houses and the places, they have saunas that are detached, right? Which part of it's, it gets quite cold there, which I don't really have here in Nashville, Tennessee. But in an environment like that, it's nice to just generally feel warm throughout the cold. But even where we were staying in Copenhagen in our Airbnb, there was a built sauna kind of in the complex area where a large group of people could come, and then you jump right into the canal that was right outside of it, which is kind of a beautiful way to spend the day. So there is a strong availability thing. So, sometimes the argument around sauna and the research behind it is that it's like, oh, it's just the accessibility, or it's because somebody's at a socioeconomic status that they are able to afford a sauna. That's the only reason it's beneficial, is because there's lots of good research to say if you have more money, you're going to be healthier because it's just easier to take care of things.
Right.
But research coming out of Finland and the different Nordic areas kind of fights against that, because it's not as determined by where your socioeconomic status is as to if you're able to do sauna. So that helps kind of take some of that variability away.
Yeah. It's just a shame. It's great information. It's good for your health. We're going to over-commercialize it, and it's going to become like a breaking point for us in the US. But until it is, we're going to look at a few clips that can really help us break down what we're hearing and the culture behind it, specifically in the US. So let's go to old BJ, Brian Johnson, because I feel like he's really spearheading some of the conversations around all things longevity and health. And it's always interesting to hear his perspective. So let's take a listen.
Over a 90% reduction in my blood and my semen of microplastics. And that was a first in world demonstration of, no one had ever done that before. The sauna annihilated the toxins. it was remarkable. So that was cool.
Okay.
2 is we have been trying to get my microplastics down because microplastics live in the body and the brain. And we were measuring microplastics in my blood and also my semen. And so microplastics hang out in the testicles, and that has all sorts of negative effects on testosterone, on fertility. You just don't want them hanging out there. So I had over a 90% reduction in my blood and my semen of microplastics.
Heyo.
He really went straight for the big talking points there.
He was probably dared of how many times he could say semen in a podcast. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, he's good at the marketing on that end to kind of have some of the more outlandish, edgy things. There we got if you're listening at home, a picture of him. His sauna protocol is pretty in-depth. It's just the way that he does everything right. He's wearing an ice mask. He's got his sauna hat on to make sure that he doesn't wear, and I mean an ice mask is in like a full face shield. The sauna hat to make sure he doesn't lose any hair. And then he also uses a product to where he's able to ice his groin to make sure that he doesn't impact his testosterone. So this is a great example of like, okay, it's fun that he has the resources to do this and dive into it and get really into the nitty gritty and be like, oh, look at what I changed. However, it doesn't have to be this. I don't need to ice my face and wear a sauna hat and have special icing underwear in order to get the benefits of sauna. And I think also the benefits that are more researched outside of the things with microplastics and toxins that he was talking about are really where the benefits lie, as opposed to thinking I'm going to like get the microplastics out of my body because I'm doing sauna.
Yeah.
It's the wide variety of things that are well supported outside of his kind of N of 1 studies. But it's fun to hear him kind of get into the details of it. And he has a good way of sometimes being dry, but he does have to market it with the powerful words.
Right. Yeah. I like that in those comments. Wait, Hayes, will you pop that back up for us? There's one comment, CER Spence. He goes, nobody has to do all that to see the results, my brother.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Well, and I think it's just, again, like you're saying, I wish health was lucrative for everybody, but it seems like we're really trying to make it an industry where we're capitalizing. And I mean, I don't know that that makes me necessarily mad because we are exposing so much. It's just a little bit of confusion around like, where do I add this? How is it beneficial? How's it going to affect me? Is this like helping me get closer to my goal or further away? And then I think as you start to progress down that, you're going to have questions like, as a female, I immediately think, well, I don't want my hair to dry out. So like there are so many things that you can kind of add to it. But I like that it kind of brings us back down to earth to say there's some great benefits behind sauna. Let's talk about what those benefits are and if you might be somebody who benefits from them. And then let's put together a program that could really benefit you in general and your longevity around sauna use. It
gets to be where, it feels like I'm not able to do that sort of a thing because you see somebody like a Brian Johnson who's doing it to this extreme.
Overwhelming.
We don't all have to operate to that same extreme, right? Like the goal is to get some exposure to that heat, to raise your body temperature, to kind of create these responses that flood throughout the body, whether it's dilation, blood flow, stimulating BDNF, all of these different things that we'll continue to get more into throughout the episode. But that doesn't require to this other extreme, right? Which is also important to say, I don't need to be at 215 degrees, right?
Right.
It's not a more is better. I don't need to be in the sauna for an hour. We're looking for that kind of 20 minutes at around 185 degrees is the sweet spot. And it's something also that doesn't have to be uncomfortable, right? Like you don't need to go in there and strategically dehydrate yourself. Something that's actually very important if you're going to start doing sauna is that you're making sure you stay hydrated, which is a wonderful chance for you to get a hydration product from our partner, The Feed, something that I use, which is just the Scratch Labs hydration. I mix that in with my bottle, drink that before, during, and after that 20-minute sauna session, because you're not trying to strip your body of the liquid and the hydration. You're trying to encourage it to do more things for you, so you don't want to set yourself up for failure there. So that's where using a hydration product can be really effective. Yeah. And I will say I'm going to give The Feed another shout out because there are thousands of electrolyte products out there. I like the comfort of knowing that this was scanned by professionals that really are looking and understanding
what is valuable for your body as it relates to performance, overall performance, health, and longevity. And so it's like they pre-screen everything for you. So I really do love that we can talk about some of those products. And not only is hydration really important, I mean, back to the microplastics, which I don't know that that was something I've ever heard from the sauna research. What other things was he doing to get microplastics out of his body? Like, was it just sauna? Because I can't imagine that being the case. Has that been part of the conversation with saunas that you've heard before?
So the tough thing with a lot of the research around like whether you have like microplastics or more importantly also nanoplastics, if you think about something that could actually pass through like a pore of a skin, is that's a newer field that hasn't been as researched with what you're going to see out of sauna, right? Because it's a somewhat of a newer problem that we've created for ourselves. So I'd love to see where this could go in the future. But if you think of any sort of conversation around, oh, it flushes toxins, it gets these things out of your body. A lot of times the idea is that you're creating kind of the pump and the circulation within your system, right? Which exercise does, movement does, but it's sometimes hard to do that. So doing something like sauna increases blood flow, increases heat, pushes blood away from certain areas of the body, and also does increase sweat rate so that you're cycling these things through, right? And that's an important aspect of just general health,
right?
Is that there's a quick transit time. The idea is that you're kind of keeping that pump going, keeping that flow going. And that's really where, in my mind, from a more layman's perspective, that sauna is effective because it just encourages the system to operate more, right?
So let's take a listen. We got another clip I want to hear from. Huberman, I think is who we're going to hear from.
Okay, most everyone loves the sauna. Not everyone loves ice baths and cold showers, but everyone loves the sauna because it feels good and it has known health benefits. Things like improved cardiovascular function, things like improved growth hormone release, and on and on. However, for some reason, I never hear people talking about two essential things you should do if you go in a hot sauna. I'm not talking about infrared sauna right now. I'm talking about traditional hot sauna, either wet or dry sauna. And typically the temperatures that I'm referring to are somewhere between 174 and about 212 degrees Fahrenheit, although, plus or minus 10 degrees. Cover your head in the sauna. There are two reasons to do that. First of all, there's a cosmetic reason to do that, which is the heat from the sauna denatures proteins, including your hair. It will make your hair brittle. So if you have hair and you want that hair to not get brittle from the heat of the sauna, cover it with a towel or one of those wool sauna caps. The second reason to cover your head in the sauna is that the impulse to get out of the sauna is what we call in neuroscience a central phenomenon, which simply means it happens in the brain. Your medial preoptic area of your hypothalamus, which sits above the roof of your mouth, are a cluster of neurons that are paying attention to your core body temperature. And when your core body temperature gets to a certain point, you get the impulse to get out of whatever environment you need to be in. Now you might think, well, if I cover my head, then I'm gonna stay in and it's too hot. Look, you don't want to be in an environment, sauna or otherwise, where it's so hot that the surface of your skin burns, of course. But by covering your head, you actually insulate your brain against some of those high heat effects. And you can stay in longer, more comfortably.
Huberman.
I did not know about the denaturing of the hair. I'd have to fact check that one.
Thank you. That was my first question. I can get behind the impulse brain neuroscience part of it. Actually, it's the denaturing of proteins that I can't really grasp to. I absolutely think heat's going to make your hair more brittle. I mean, as a girl who uses heated products, I understand that more than anybody, but that seemed a little extreme for some reason.
Yeah. And it's the same thing to say, okay, like, so I want to go try sauna, right? But I feel like I need to have my head covered. And so I have to buy a sauna hat. And then I'm stressed. So I start adding these other things. It doesn't necessarily have to be like that. Like, it's not like one day in the sauna is going to make you bald. Something to consider if you are like privileged enough to do something 7 days a week and you're like, oh, I'm adding sauna every single day. Likely these sorts of things may come into effect more, but if you're going once or twice a week, you can still get some of the health benefits without maybe having the same risk profile. I personally do not like the feeling I've covered my head with a towel in the sauna, and it's just not quite the same, feeling for me. But the sauna hats are something that you see in and out of places. I'll say I was at the public sauna at the YMCA where I work out, and a gentleman brought his hat in. Nice. So for my sample size of the 10 people that were in the sauna, it was an N of 1 that was wearing a sauna hat out of the 10. So it's not as common in some places. And the Finnish people will argue with you about this as well if you start to get in the sauna rabbit hole online. Right. But it is, helpful to find things that make you more comfortable.
It's a barrier of entry to me. Like, the more complicated something seems, the less likely I'm going to try it, or I'm going to wait until I'm in the mood to try it. I'd like to switch gears and kind of say, all right, if maybe you're curious about sauna. Number one, what are some of the main benefits? And I'm going to go ahead and throw you out number two, but we can talk about it again. Number two is what's a good prescription to get started in sauna or to add sauna to your routine?
It kind of acts as an exercise mimetic. So it's a similar response that you get to doing low to moderate activity. Your heart rate's going to increase a little bit. Your core body temperature is going to increase. You're going to start sweating. Blood flow is going to increase, circulating throughout the body, which is just going to upregulate a lot of like systemic things within the entire body, right? Which is a positive. It's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get active. We're trying to get moving. That increase in temperature is also going to help potentially, if you get to a hot enough, release some of like the more neuroprotective compounds. So you probably heard, we'll have maybe a Dr. Rhonda Patrick clip talking about BDNF, which is kind of like something that helps with your brain regeneration. So that's a big point of emphasis on people using saunas that are like, oh, it's for brain health, which is where you have somebody like Huberman coming on saying, oh, we want to protect the brain with a hat. But the benefits may outweigh it if you're able to get to that same temperature, which is kind of that 102.2 as far as a body temp goes. So you asked about general prescription.
Yes.
For what you're looking for. So the goal and what you see a lot of times is to hit around 20 minutes of sustained time in the hot environment, right? So that's that kind of 180, 185 is like a really tight target temperature, which maybe you have control of, maybe you don't if you're in a public sauna. And then ideally you're getting that 3 times a week as like kind of a general prescription, right? Like you can still get some benefit at one, more may be better, but if you're able to hit that 3 times a week, that's going to be a great way to get started. And then alongside that, you have your hydration before, during, and after, and you respect that this is a new stimulus, right? Like it's nice because it's something that feels passive, but it is still a new stress on the body, right? And that stress is a positive stress. So a eustress, something that's creating a positive change, but it is something to be respected if you have a strength training workout, an aerobic workout, all of these different things. It is still additive. So know that when you're adding this into your routine.
Yeah. I want to hear from Rhonda Patrick here in just a second. And I actually put together a presentation for a group of people where I was talking about recovery techniques and kind of measuring up different recovery technology that's out there. And one of the subjects is sauna. And I leaned heavily on her research of like what she saw, not just in once a week use, twice a week use, but that 3 to 4 times a week had a significant increase in all of those benefits. For me, it is a total recovery device for me. It's relaxing for me. I can listen to a podcast in there. I like the mental challenge of trying to stay in a hot environment for those 20 minutes. Like it's a competitive goal for me at the same time.
If you finish your workout and you're able to sit in there for 10 minutes, fantastic. Get used to it. See how it fits into your routine and slowly build up to more.
And then one other question I had, you mentioned this earlier, dry versus wet, infrared, barrel. I don't know that you can like rank them necessarily, but maybe could you prioritize a sauna that would be more worth your time than something else?
So the traditional cabin dry sauna, so, heated with like your typical like stone heating element sort of a thing, would be kind of the first pick because it's also going to get to that temperature range that you're going for the easiest, right?
Right.
The barrel saunas can be a great entry point to have something at home, but there is some argument around airflow, how tight it might be, multiple people, and then also the cold foot problem of if your feet are kind of below the temperature, but that gets more splitting hairs and it's just an overall comfort setting. And then the whole other market of infrared, near infrared, like heating and those sorts of saunas has kind of a different marketing that they're trying to say that you don't need the same temperature because the heating style is different, but that is somewhat flawed. There is still benefit to being in the infrared heat. You may need to extend that out a little bit longer to get your body to, get to that same overall temperature. So if you say you have 20 minutes in a dry sauna that's set at 185 degrees, you may need to be in the infrared sauna closer to 40 minutes in order to receive that same overall temperature change. Going back to the original question, the infrared sauna is a little bit different, maybe more time. So I would put that lower on the hierarchy of if you have access or if you're going to a sauna house, a hot box, all these different kind of boutique things that have popped up. Try to find one with a dry sauna to get the true benefit.
Yeah. And speaking of, I really do love that we are starting to make sauna kind of communal in a way. This is one area where the research is so stout, it's so obvious. And really, it's just a matter of working yourself up to a consistent pattern with it.
The research on groups and group activities and finding those things in those third spaces is also quite powerful. In fact, sometimes even more powerful than like cardiorespiratory fitness. Is just like, oh, what your social environment is like. Yeah. So that's another kind of hidden benefit to it that especially people in the Nordic countries really see, because it is such a community-based things, or you have the Russian bathhouses or any of these things that have been for such a long period of time. There's a large community point to that as well. So that's something not to be understated.
Yeah. Well, I think a great way to kind of start to wrap up is hearing from the woman herself, Rhonda Patrick, who's really spearheaded a lot of this research. And she's going to talk a little bit more about brain health. So let's hear what she has to say.
This study looked at sauna use and dementia risk, and then it sort of stratified the data based on temperature. And it was protective again. People that are using the sauna, again, they're getting a protective effect against dementia. But when people were going extreme, so if they're going above 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're on average, it was like if they're getting to like 212, people do this, by the way. This is like, you can go on Instagram and see it's not an uncommon thing. Their dementia risk was actually increased with that temperature, where it was like really hot. And my concern is the head at that high of a temperature. I hope people that are out there doing the 212 are like listening to this, because it's too hot.
She's so smart. I freaking love that woman.
No, she's great. I always think back to in high school, I had this like a motivational group came through, and the whole thing was like at 211 degrees, water is hot, and at 212, it's boiling. If you go to the hottest environment possible, it's backfiring, and you're actually just boiling your brain. So it's a great lesson in moderation, which is something we come back to over and over again on this show. Is the moderate approach tends to be the best approach.
Yeah. I'm kind of chuckling that she had to actually say that. Joe Rogan was talking about saunas, and he goes, I like it at 210, man. I just love, like he was, Joe Roganing out, so to speak, on it. And the whole time I thought, like, not cool, I want to get there. Just like, why? How miserable? There's so many other things that you could be doing and forcing your body through. Like, why go that hot? Why be at that pace? But I think it is a product of, well, if 180 is great, 210's got to be even better. And to her point, there is a sweet spot to how many times you do it, to the protective level it provides in your routine. So I think we've created a lot of space for Dr. Sprouse to come in, and hopefully he can give us a little bit more insight to what he's seeing with all of the benefits around sauna use.
I enjoyed listening to the conversation so far on sauna. And I was struck by this idea that, one, for sauna, we know there's just a lot of evidence, decades of evidence for sauna, looking at various endpoints. And so then the question becomes like, well, what are you using it for? And I think when we look at a lot of the things that we're going to look at in this podcast, where people post about a given topic and say that it's great, a lot of times they don't say what it's great for, or they kind of use a rationale from one use case and just say, hey, see, it works, and that's why we're using it for this. And it just doesn't make sense to jump from A to B. So I want to kind of throw it back at you guys for this part and say, sauna looks great. What do you want to use it for? And let's kind of break it down kind of use case by use case.
Traditionally, sauna to me was really around muscle recovery and, recovery in general. I think after listening to some of the research, the cardiovascular benefits really interest me, and how maybe it could be supplemented for some cardiovascular training or health when I can't get out and get it all in my normal fitness routine.
From a recovery standpoint, specifically muscular recovery, I think there's good rationale on why it could be meaningful but not a game changer, like something that you could add to your regimen if you had the resource and the time. And the reason I put it that way is because what sauna does is it increases blood flow, basically. Heat's going to increase blood flow. Your heart rate's going to go up a little bit. Your blood vessels are going to dilate a little bit. You're going to kind of pump more blood to the muscles and subsequently more blood out of the muscles. And so you get a little bit of a flush. And it's not so much that toxins are being removed, but the just normal byproducts of metabolism. That process of returning the muscle physiology back to normal is probably sped up a little bit. I'm not talking about things like, people think lactic acid and the next day their legs are achy and it can be hard to sit down or stand up or go upstairs. That has nothing to do with lactate or what's called lactic acid. It has everything to do with the actual physical damage to the muscle cell and some of the local inflammatory processes that happen around that. And so if you can flush that a bit, you can probably increase the rate at which you recover from that episode of training. It's not going to be the one game changer, but depending on what it is that you need to accomplish in your recovery regimen that day, it can be a really good tool. I think there's a psychological recovery component to just sitting in the quiet, and that's different than the muscular part, but I wanted to drop that in. And then you mentioned the cardiovascular part. So it's true that sauna is a particularly good modality for improving cardiovascular health in people who are sedentary, older, maybe have some cardiovascular issues like congestive heart failure. That may be a population that would do really well with regular sauna exposure for that purpose. That's not to say that somebody who exercises regularly can get an added benefit to their cardiovascular fitness from sauna time. I think that there probably is a slight uptick. If you're running and swimming and on the bike and doing cardiovascular stuff in the gym, rowing and things like that regularly, and then you add a daily sauna session, I'm not sure you're really moving the mark for cardiovascular fitness, not significantly. But if you find yourself in a period of time where you either aren't doing a lot of training or can't, like maybe you're injured, then replacing some of that time with sauna time for the purposes of cardiovascular fitness might be worthwhile. Like if you could go run or go sit in the sauna, you're going to get a lot fitter, minute for minute going on that run.
Dang it.
I know, sorry.
Just kidding. I know, right?
Any other use cases y'all can think of?
Yeah, so I enjoy what you talked about there with just the quiet psychological aspect of it. But a big thing that has pushed me to want to try to incorporate it more in my routine is just I have a history in my family of stroke and cognitive decline. So some of the research around those two deficiencies, I guess if I call them that, and maybe fighting against it, make it to where it's okay, if I'm already doing strength training, a little bit of aerobic work, maybe I can add this in 2-3 times a week and kind of get some benefit to work on mitigating those risks.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I'm not sure that we know the answer, quite honestly. For somebody who's already doing those things from an exercise standpoint, lifestyle standpoint, whether the benefits layer, right? I don't think there's a downside. So I wouldn't dissuade you from that, especially when there's other reasons that sauna could be beneficial. Whether it's going to decrease your risk of stroke, heart attack, what we call vasculopathies, vascular problems, while doing those other things, I'm not sure. It probably falls into that bucket of ticking every box, right? Like I couldn't sit here and tell you that you've got to go buy a sauna, you've got to do this because of your family history, because of its exercise mimicking effects, which is kind of what you're describing. It just would be kind of disingenuous of me, right? So if I'm talking to a patient who really wants to take advantage of sauna for the purposes of cardiovascular risk mitigation and they're already exercising, I would say if it's a heavy lift, don't worry about it. If it's not, and you like doing it and you're kind of comfortable spending the time on it and you want to harvest some of the other benefits, it's a great thing to throw in the mix. So it's a little bit nuanced in that way, I guess.
Is there somebody who is not an ideal candidate for a sauna?
People who have difficulty with autonomic regulation, so their blood pressure drops, or they keep a really low blood pressure, or they don't tolerate changes in temperature well, they're prone to passing out. Somebody like that has to be really, really careful. I mentioned earlier that some people with cardiovascular issues like congestive heart failure can benefit from it. I would make that decision very closely with your doctor because there are different types of congestive heart failure. But for some of them, it can be a really great treatment. For others, it may be a really unfortunate stress on the heart. Right? So you want to make sure that you're the right candidate for it.
Yeah.
And someone with coronary artery disease. So if we're doing anything that's an exercise mimetic, we're increasing the heart rate, putting a cardiovascular stress on the system, and somebody has narrowed coronary arteries, that could be a dangerous combination. So that's not an exhaustive list, but it's pretty easy to think anything that can be effective and beneficial in the right scenario can be effectively detrimental in the wrong scenario.
I know there's a big conversation around like infrared sauna versus dry sauna versus steam sauna. What was your take on all that?
Yeah. If the conversation is starting from a place of, hey, I've got lots of resources and want to put a sauna in and take advantage of all the various benefits, like not targeted this one thing I want, but like I just want the goodness of sauna and I've got the resources to do it, then a traditional dry sauna that gets fairly hot, probably has the capacity to go up to 200, 210 degrees Fahrenheit. Not that you're going to go there necessarily, but having that ability, that's where I would start. A lot of the benefits that we see in the literature really look to be maximized around 180 to 185 degrees Fahrenheit. So ideally, you'll have a sauna that gets there. And a lot of infrared saunas don't. They go to 140, 145, 150. That doesn't mean they're useless, right? So by the same token, I actually once had an infrared sauna given to me. I loved it. I recognized its limitations. I had to be in there longer.
Kevin, tread lightly. Patrick is getting so jealous right now.
Oh, yeah, I know. I should have shipped it to you when I was done with it, Patrick.
Well, you should have put it in your practice so we could all use it. My goodness.
I know. Maybe somebody listening will send us one and we can start this conversation over. But I don't think the infrared ones are worthless, right? It's not that. It's that if you're going to get the best bang for your buck, go for that dry sauna. Yeah. I don't think there's anything to the whole idea of like heating you from the inside out with the infrared and the detoxifying like from the infrared. Like the near infrared and red light penetrates a very small distance into the skin. And most people probably doesn't get to the muscle. It might get like into the fat below the skin, maybe the top layer of muscle, but it's just really impractical to think you're getting this deep heating from the inside out and detoxification. It's just silly. I mean, if I'm honest. But it does get warm, right? So you can still get some heat exposure from it. 150 degrees is not nothing. I mean, if you've ever sat in 150, it's still hot. It just means that you're going to spend more time in there to get the same result. You might not get the same amplitude of result because you just can't get the heat as high. But if you've got a great spot for a sauna, you can't wire it for a traditional sauna, but you can get an infrared one in there. Somebody gave you one. You bought a house that came with one. Roll with it. That's great. Use it. If you're making a decision on what to purchase, I'd say look a different way. And then you asked about steam rooms or kind of the idea of a wet sauna versus a dry sauna. We don't really know how steam compares to dry sauna. My expectation is that it's just a matter of heat. And if it gets hot enough, how heat is transferred through air versus steam or water. So it's really how hot does it get you?
Right.
And I suspect that between the two, you can find a good steam sauna or steam shower or steam room or whatever that is beneficial.
Yeah, a 200 degree steam room's about boiling, so that would not be the best for your skin.
Exactly. But it is nice when you go in the ones that have like the eucalyptus spray they've got in there. And,
yeah.
Especially during allergy season right now, kind of clear you out a little bit.
Yeah. I do always wonder about the mold and like what's growing in there.
You don't want to see a steam room when it's turned off. Like having worked at commercial gyms, it's even when it's clean, it's not a good look. It's bad enough sitting in the public sauna on someone else's sweat pile.
Yeah.
When they get up and you're trying to get your spot in, which I have to use a public sauna to get my exposure, but it's also fun to have kind of like the conversation that's going on in the Northwest Nashville sauna.
The Northwest Nashville sauna scene. What's the buzz in there, Patrick?
It's a lot of ex-athletes that are talking about the aches and pains of being an ex-athlete and trying to do whatever they can to feel better, reflective of our conversation and just trying to get a little relief from, years of playing football.
For the last 2 years, I've been using my cousin's sauna that I thought was infrared, and they only recently told me that it was just random red bulbs. And I was like,
Oh, so it gets like 90 degrees?
Yeah.
It's just a red sauna.
It's just red. She was like, "Oh, did you not see you can make the colors like dance for you when you're in there?" And I was like, "No, I just feel like a huge idiot, really, more than anything."
It's probably infrared, and it's probably got LEDs that you can change for like that. There's some sort of like color therapy you can do in these things.
I'm a marketer's dream. Like you tell me it's gonna detoxify me, I'm like, yeah, let's do it, So they got me with all that.
There's another use case that I think you guys touched on, but I can't remember, heat acclimatization or acclimation. And for a lot of athletes, this is hugely important. So like when I'm working with Tour de France athletes who are training at altitude in May and June where it's really cold for a race in July that's going to be really hot, they can't just get the altitude stimulus and then come down not prepared for the heat. So, we will use a heat protocol to kind of get them ready to encounter that heat, even though they're not getting it during their training. They're not training in heat. And so a lot of athletes have started using this for lots of different reasons. One would be like that, to be prepared for the heat. Another is because of the benefits or the physiological changes that happen from heat exposure, it just increases certain physiological parameters that will not necessarily make you fitter, but make your fitness more pronounced for the given task at hand. So I know that sounds like splitting hairs, but what it's basically doing is taking you from like a 95% ready to 100% ready.
If I'm an athlete who's, say, training in the heat already, like maybe I'm doing my bike rides from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, I'm doing runs midday to kind of get heat acclimation with my training, is there any suggestion of an additive benefit of adding sauna in to continue to boost that serum volume, or am I getting that from the heat exposure in my bouts of training?
It's a good question. I don't think we know definitively. Okay. You'll find a lot of super high, like super elite athletes doing that, like adding sauna, trying to harvest an extra percentage point or whatever, and really hanging their hat on a lot of what we call mechanistic plausibility, like it might work and this is why it might work, but I don't think we know. So if it was 95% or more of the population who's just looking to get a little fitter, I think the risks from doing it outweigh the benefits. And the risks being the added load from the sauna, being basically added training stress, and just overcooking yourself, not temperature-wise, but training-wise. Mm-hmm. So most people can probably avoid that scenario that you just laid out. A couple other dangers or potential dangers that come along with the sauna. You guys mentioned hair loss. You played that clip by Huberman, which we can talk about. Talked about kind of sperm motility and sperm health, and even growth hormone release and the sauna hats and all that stuff. I think digging into that's kind of interesting too. A lot of it, I feel like anytime something becomes really prevalent and more people are doing it, it's not sexy enough anymore to say, oh, you just have to do sauna. Now it's, oh, but wait, you have to do it this way, right? Because the whole wellness, like influencer scene is set up around, I know a little bit more than you do, and if you listen to me, I'll explain to you how to do it best, right? Mm-hmm. And so what starts off as a pretty benign and scientifically valid conversation from like a Rhonda Patrick, like you all mentioned, can start to spiral a little bit. And then you've got Andrew Huberman talking about denaturing hair proteins, which is silly. Hair protein doesn't denature until somewhere around 300 to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So just the conversation there, he's just throwing out some terms that sound great, but are technically wrong. Now, I will say what he's getting at is that being in that dry heat for a long time may not be great for hair. Sure, that's very different than the proteins melting, which is what denaturing is. And so I do think there's things to consider around the longer term heat exposure. I won't pretend to be an expert in hair care, but it is the case that if you kind of guard against that temperature increase, you probably will have generally healthier hair and scalp. That doesn't mean you're going to prevent baldness. That doesn't mean that it's going to be like this dramatic change. Your hair's not going to melt and denature and fall out, though.
How the heck do you sell a sauna cap without saying that, though?
I know.
That's probably what he was getting at.
That's a hard thing to do. Like keep it all wrapped up and like in the bounds of evidence and still sell a sauna cap. It looks like like a yard gnome.
I know.
And then the conversation around sperm motility, sperm health.
Yeah, talk to us about our sperm health.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an argument that doesn't stand up, right? There's nothing actually there. So it is true that regular heat exposure will absolutely decrease sperm motility and fertility rates in a short term. That's entirely recoverable within 3 months. That's kind of the life cycle there. And so if you're trying to conceive, you probably want to avoid extended sauna and hot tub exposure. But like drawing this line between decreased sperm motility because of sauna exposure and decreased overall health, like there's not dots on that line. Like somebody's just connecting 2 points and trying to come up with a story. It is true that overall, if you look at a population, sperm health does follow general health. So in other words, decreased sperm health typically goes along with decreased male health in a population, not an individual. Now, when you know why you're seeing that decreased sperm motility, and it's because of sauna, that correlation there gets broken, right? Sauna is something that is generally healthy. You know, people in Finland are having kids too, right? And they do sauna bathing all the time. The reason that decreased sperm motility and male health line up is for all the other reasons that someone might have decreased sperm motility. So poor metabolic health, just a generally bad physical state, right? If you're having a short-term decrease in that motility because of heat exposure or cold exposure, if you're going to put ice down there, extreme cold will also decrease sperm motility. So I'm not sure just packing your groin with ice is the fix to this conundrum. The point being, you're seeing, two things that in some situations move together for broad general reasons that are understandable, and then looking at a specific pressure on that one variable and watching it move and saying, oh, it must be because general health is worse, when you can't really draw that line. I hope I'm explaining that well. The short version is, if you're trying to conceive, especially if you've had a hard time doing it, it's probably best to avoid regular sauna exposure or hot tub or maybe even ice bath. But if you're not, and you're just focused on the general health benefits of a sauna and the cardiovascular benefits and all that, it's a really reasonable thing to do and not worry about sperm health, because that sperm health is not indicative of your overall health in that situation.
My information gathering is from Instagram and social media and TikTok. And it's fascinating the spin everything can take. But when you can just break it down as simply as you just did, it really puts it into context of, now, how am I going to add this? Do I want to add this? And what is my overall purpose of adding this?
And it doesn't have to be like super difficult or like some secret protocol that you use. I mean, with sauna, it's heat exposure, how long you're in there, what does your body do responding to it, and what does that kind of trigger? You'll see people talking about, don't hydrate, wait till you get out. It's kind of ridiculous and probably just puts yourself at risk. And so taking in, whether it's just water, you can use electrolytes. Patrick knows this, but my go-to like daily hydration when I'm not exercising, just kind of whether it's in the office or if I were to use the sauna, would be half a sachet of Element, which is great because I can use it for 2 days. And then I'll do half of that and then a full scoop of Pillar Magnesium. And both of those I get from the feed. For me, that kind of ticks the boxes of what I need mixed into a liter of water. And I would very happily take that into a sauna and not worry about the fact that I'm hydrating while I'm in there, maybe blunting effects, which is just ridiculous. So it all goes back to like, this doesn't have to be overly complicated. And a lot of it can make sense. Like, let it make sense. If it's not making sense, there's probably something off in what's being told to you.
Kevin, one thing that I think I see a lot of around saunas is this idea of detoxification. And that's both with infrared and regular sauna. Do you want to dive a little deeper on yes or no? Is that actually happening?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I say yes, I'll dive a little bit deeper. No, it's not really happening to a meaningful degree. I think what people get confused is that most excretion of toxins or waste products, most of what people call toxins in these conversations aren't really toxins anyway. They're just, they're the normal physiological byproducts you've ingested at some point and your body has used and broken down and you're getting rid of part of it. So like when you breathe air in, you eventually breathe out carbon dioxide. Is that a toxin? I don't think that's the word I would use, right? And so it's kind of the same thing with what's coming out of your skin or what's being processed through the liver. The vast majority of it is not going to be toxins per se. And if you do have a toxic load of like lead, you're not going to meaningfully decrease that through sweat. Your liver does the bulk of that work. And I don't mean just with lead, but like with actual toxins in general, your liver is going to work to clean that up. And then your kidneys generally will excrete it, sometimes in the stool, right? So it's not really the sweat necessarily. Now, if you take sweat and you look at its contents, there will be stuff in there, ions and molecules and stuff that you're like, oh, thank goodness we're getting that out, right? It's like, maybe, but like I just think it's conflating some physiological processes and misinterpreting what's going on. It's not like you're doing a dialysis session, right? And just cleaning everything up.
Right.
So I don't look at sauna as being a meaningful detoxification in any way. Hopefully you're not taking in many toxins. And if you are, your liver's able to keep up, and or you figure out where they're coming from, you stop taking them in. A sauna is not going to do much in that process.
Last sauna session I went to, I took a Costco plastic water bottle from just like the rack into the sauna and was making the joke that I'm putting the toxins right back in with my microplastics as I sweat them out.
That's right. Heat that bottle and drink it.
Yeah.
Yep, several times.
Good luck, Patrick.
Just maintaining equilibrium.
Yes.
So ultimately, I think if we look at sauna, I would say pretty overwhelmingly, there's great use cases for sauna. There's lots of data, lots of evidence for years, decades, but it really depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish. So if you're looking for better cardiovascular health, for some people, it may be great. For others, it may be a drop in the bucket that is not really worth the lift. So you have to kind of assess what you want to get out of it there. If you're looking for heat adaptation, it's fantastic. If you're looking for a psychological recovery at the end of a long day or a long workout, if you're looking for some muscular recovery on an off day, all those things can be really benefited by sauna in the right setting. So I would say with this one, it's definitely one to look into, definitely one to see if it suits your needs. But there's also a lot of misinformation out there. So just be careful around how you use it, why you use it, and what type of sauna maybe that you use for your given purposes.
Yeah. Well, that definitely cleared up some of the things I was curious about around sauna, and hopefully for our listeners that did as well. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you click and subscribe. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and we're going to continue to have some great conversations around what everyone's trying and whether or not it's worth it. So thanks.
Everybody's trying.
Everybody's Trying is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your healthcare provider regarding questions about your health.